The sterile white halls of Melbourne General Hospital gleamed under fluorescent lights. Dr. Lisa Martinez strode through the corridor, her designer lab coat swishing with each purposeful step. As the hospital's youngest chief of surgery and fiancé to hospital board chairman Dr. James Chen, she carried herself with the confidence of someone untouchable. "Move faster," Lisa snapped at a nurse struggling with a medication cart. "This isn't a retirement home. We have standards here." The nursing staff had learned to scatter when they heard Lisa's heels approaching. Her sharp tongue and quick temper were legendary throughout the hospital. Some whispered that her engagement to James had made her worse, more demanding, more ruthless, more convinced of her own importance. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Lisa reviewed surgical schedules in her office, dismissing concerns from junior doctors with waves of her hand. When her assistant brought coffee 2 minutes late, Lisa threw the cup in the trash without drinking it. "Incompetence," she muttered. "Everywhere I look, incompetence." Down in the hospital's main lobby, a woman in pale blue scrubs mopped the tile floor. Her name tag read, Mary, Custodial Services. She moved methodically, her silver hair pulled back under a simple cap. No one paid her much attention. Hospital cleaners were invisible to most doctors and patients alike. Mary wasn't really a custodial worker. She was Margaret Chen, James's mother, and she'd come to the hospital disguised after weeks of troubling phone calls from concerned staff members. "Your son's fiancé is destroying morale," one brave nurse had told her anonymously. "She treats us like we're beneath her." Margaret had raised James alone after her husband died, working 3 jobs to put him through medical school. She'd scrubbed floors then too, real floors, for real wages. Now, wearing borrowed scrubs, she wanted to see the woman who might become her daughter-in-law when nobody knew who she was watching. Around noon, Lisa emerged from surgery, still riding the high of a successful operation. She pulled off her surgical cap, shaking out her perfectly styled hair. 2 interns trailed behind her, tablets in hand, struggling to keep up with her rapid-fire instructions. "The patient in 304 needs better monitoring," Lisa said without looking back. "And someone tell the nurses to actually read the charts before bothering me with questions. I'm not here to do their jobs for them." As she rounded the corner near the elevator, her phone rang. James's name flashed on the screen. "Darling," she answered, her voice suddenly warm. "Yes, dinner tonight sounds perfect. I'll wear the dress you like." Distracted by the call, Lisa didn't notice the wet floor sign. Her expensive heel caught a slick patch of tile, and she stumbled forward, arms windmilling. Her phone clattered to the ground. Margaret, mopping nearby, reached out to steady her. "Careful, doctor. Are you okay?" Lisa jerked away as if she'd been burned. "Don't touch me." She stared at her phone, now with a cracked screen, lying in a small puddle of soapy water. "Look what you did. Do you have any idea how much this costs?" "I'm sorry," Margaret said calmly. "The floor is wet. I put up a sign." "I don't care about your sign." Lisa's voice rose, echoing through the lobby. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. "You people make this place look cheap. Can't you mop without leaving puddles everywhere?" Margaret bent to pick up Lisa's phone, carefully wiping it with a clean cloth from her cart. "Here. It should still work." Lisa snatched it away. "Should work. Should." Her face flushed red. "This is $1,000 phone. You've probably ruined it because you can't do a simple job right." An elderly patient in a wheelchair nearby whispered to his daughter, "That doctor is mean." Margaret stood quietly, her expression unchanged. She'd seen anger before, from exhausted residents, worried family members, patients in pain. But this was different. This was contempt, pure and cold. "People like you," Lisa continued, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper, "need to learn your place. You're here to clean, not to interfere with important people doing important work." Then, in a moment that would change everything, Lisa shoved Margaret backward. The older woman stumbled, catching herself against her mop cart. The bucket tipped, sending more water across the floor. A security guard took a step forward but stopped, unsure how to intervene when the aggressor was one of the hospital's most powerful doctors. Margaret straightened slowly, one hand pressed to her chest where Lisa had pushed her. She looked directly into the younger woman's eyes. "I hope," she said softly, "that you're never treated the way you treat others." Something in those words made Lisa pause for just a second. But pride rushed back quickly. "Clean this mess up," Lisa ordered, turning on her heel. "And stay out of my way." As Lisa disappeared into the elevator, Margaret stood in the spreading puddle, her heart heavy. Around her, nurses exchanged shocked glances. The security guard's hand shook as he keyed his radio, unsure whether to report what he'd seen. In her pocket, Margaret's phone buzzed. A text from James. "Can't wait to see you tonight, Mom. I want you and Lisa to finally spend real time together. She's amazing. I know you'll love her." Margaret looked at the message for a long moment. Then she picked up her mop and quietly resumed cleaning, knowing that the real test had only just begun. Thumbs up if you're hooked by this story. Please like this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what happens next. Will James discover the truth about Lisa? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Backhand index pointing down. Lisa Martinez wasn't born cruel. Once, years ago, she'd been different. A medical student with dreams of helping people, someone who smiled at cafeteria workers and remembered nurses' names. But somewhere between her first surgical rotation and her engagement ring, something had hardened inside her. Her transformation had roots in an old wound. 5 years earlier, Lisa had been engaged to another doctor, Dr. Robert Kim. He was kind, thoughtful, and devastated when he discovered Lisa had falsified research data to get ahead on a competitive fellowship application. Robert had broken off their engagement publicly, at a hospital fundraiser, calling her ambitious without integrity. The humiliation had scorched her. Rather than reflect on Robert's words, Lisa had decided the problem wasn't her ethics, it was her vulnerability. She vowed never to be weak again, never to let anyone see her as less than perfect, and never to give respect to those who couldn't advance her career. Now, sitting in her pristine office, Lisa scrolled through her phone. The cracked screen annoyed her, but she'd already ordered a replacement. The cleaner's face flashed in her mind for a moment, those calm eyes, that quiet dignity. Lisa shook the image away. "Dr. Martinez?" Her assistant, Jenny, knocked timidly on the door. "The department meeting is in 10 minutes. "I know how to read a calendar," Lisa snapped without looking up. Jenny's shoulders tensed. She'd been Lisa's assistant for 6 months and had learned to anticipate the doctor's moods like someone reading weather patterns before a storm. Meanwhile, in a small apartment across the city, Margaret Chen sat at a kitchen table, writing in a leather journal. The pages were filling quickly with observations. Tuesday, 11:45 a.m. Lisa pushed me in hospital lobby. Called me, "people like you." Showed no remorse. Security witnessed but did nothing. She doesn't see servants as human. Margaret had kept journals all her life, first as a young widow trying to process grief, then as a struggling mother documenting James's childhood milestones she couldn't afford to photograph. Now, this journal served a different purpose, recording evidence her son might not believe from words alone. She thought back to the sacrifices she'd made. Working as a hotel housekeeper by day, a grocery store clerk by evening, taking in sewing at night while James slept on a mattress on the floor of their one-room apartment. She'd gone hungry so he could eat. She'd worn the same 3 outfits for years so he could have school supplies. When James won that medical school scholarship, Margaret had wept with joy. And when he later bought her a house and tried to give her money, she'd refused most of it. "I don't need luxury," she told him. "I need to know you're with someone who values what really matters." That afternoon, Lisa led her department meeting with her characteristic intensity. She criticized a colleague's patient care decisions, mocked a resident's question as elementary, and dismissed concerns about nursing staff burnout as not our problem. Dr. Patricia Williams, a senior surgeon, finally spoke up. "Lisa, Morale is actually quite important to patient outcomes. The research clearly shows. Research also shows, Lisa interrupted, that coddling mediocrity doesn't improve performance. Excellence requires pressure. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Like many at Melbourne General, she'd learned that challenging Lisa meant risking retaliation. After the meeting, James stopped by Lisa's office. His handsome face lit up when he saw her. "There's my brilliant fiancé," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Mom's excited about dinner tonight. She's been asking about you." Lisa's smile was automatic and perfect. "I can't wait to spend more time with her. She's wonderful." She'd met Margaret only twice before, briefly at the engagement party and once at James's birthday dinner. Both times, Margaret had been quiet, watching more than talking. Lisa had barely noticed her, assuming the older woman was simply overwhelmed by her son's success. "She is wonderful," James agreed, his voice softening. "Everything I am, I owe to her. She worked herself nearly to death to give me opportunities." "That's beautiful," Lisa said, already distracted by an email on her screen. James didn't seem to notice. "She's wise too. Very observant. She can read people incredibly well." Something in his tone made Lisa look up. "What do you mean?" "Just that she notices things others miss." James shrugged, smiling. "It used to drive me crazy as a teenager. I could never hide anything from her." After James left, Lisa felt an unexpected flutter of unease. She pushed it away. There was no reason to worry. Margaret was just an old woman, a former housecleaner who'd gotten lucky with a smart son. What could she possibly know about Lisa's world? That evening, Margaret returned to the hospital for her second shift in disguise. This time she worked in the cafeteria, serving food alongside real staff who'd been told only that she was helping out temporarily. Lisa came through the line at 7 p.m., exhausted from back-to-back surgeries. She barely glanced at Margaret as she pointed to items on the menu. That. Not that. It looks cold. And get me fresh coffee, not whatever's been sitting there." "Yes, ma'am," Margaret said quietly, preparing the tray. When Lisa reached for her food, she knocked over a cup of soup. Hot liquid splashed across the counter, some of it landing on Margaret's hand. Margaret flinched but made no sound. "Ugh, be more careful where you put things." Lisa snapped, grabbing napkins to wipe her own coat. She didn't ask if Margaret was burned. She didn't apologize. She simply walked away, leaving the mess. A young medical student behind her in line helped Margaret clean up. "I'm sorry about her," he whispered. "She's not always like that." Margaret smiled sadly. "I think she is exactly like that. Most people just don't see it." In her journal that night, Margaret wrote, "Lisa showed no concern when soup burned my hand. Didn't acknowledge her role in the spill. Pattern confirmed, she doesn't see service workers as people who can be hurt." She closed the journal and looked at a photograph on her wall. James as a little boy, gap-toothed and grinning, hugging her tightly. Her son deserved better than someone who measured human worth by job titles. The test would continue. And soon, James would have to see what Margaret had already discovered, that beneath Lisa's polished exterior lived a heart that had forgotten how to be humble. Melbourne General Hospital was preparing for its annual board review, a critical event where major donors and health department officials evaluated the hospital's performance. For weeks, department heads had been polishing presentations and rehearsing answers to anticipated questions. For Lisa Martinez, this was an opportunity to shine. She'd volunteered to coordinate the welcome reception, seeing it as a chance to demonstrate her leadership to people who could advance her career even further. James had smiled when she'd offered, proud of her initiative. "That's my Lisa," he'd said. Always thinking ahead. What neither James nor Lisa knew was that Margaret had learned about the board review from a friendly administrative assistant. She'd made arrangements to work that day, this time as a temporary catering assistant hired through an agency. The hospital's regular catering team, overwhelmed with the scale of the event, had readily accepted the extra help. The morning of the review, Lisa arrived at 6 a.m. to inspect every detail. She moved through the hospital's grand conference center like a general surveying a battlefield, barking orders at everyone in her path. Those flowers are wilting. Replace them. The name tags aren't alphabetically arranged. Fix it. And why is this coffee station so close to the entrance? Move it back 3 feet. Her assistant Jenny scrambled to make notes, her hands shaking slightly. In the past week, Lisa had become even more demanding than usual, the pressure of the event amplifying her worst tendencies. Margaret arrived at 7 a.m., wearing a simple black catering uniform. She watched from the serving area as Lisa orchestrated the setup, noting how the younger woman never said, "please," or "thank you" to the staff working around her. "You there." Lisa pointed at Margaret without making eye contact. "Those water pitchers need to be filled completely. And use filtered water, not tap. Can you manage that?" "Yes, ma'am," Margaret replied. As Margaret worked, she observed the hospital staff's reactions to Lisa. Nurses stiffened when she passed. Junior doctors kept their eyes down. Even senior physicians seemed wary, measuring their words carefully around her. Dr. Patricia Williams approached the refreshment table, noticed Margaret, and offered a kind smile. "Thank you for helping today. We appreciate it." "It's my pleasure," Margaret said, meaning it. Patricia leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Watch yourself around Dr. Martinez. She's demanding today." Margaret nodded, understanding the warning beneath the words. By 9 a.m., board members began arriving. Lisa transformed instantly, her harsh edges smoothing into professional charm. She greeted each official with a perfect smile, remembering names, offering thoughtful comments about their previous visits. James arrived with the hospital's CEO, Dr. Richard Foster. He caught Lisa's eye across the room and winked. She blew him a subtle kiss in return, feeling triumphant. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Then Margaret, carrying a tray of fresh coffee cups, stumbled slightly on an uneven carpet edge. 3 empty cups clattered onto the floor. They didn't break, but the noise echoed through the suddenly quiet room. Every head turned. Lisa's face flushed red. She strode across the room, her professional mask cracking. "Are you kidding me?" she hissed, loud enough for nearby board members to hear. "Today of all days? Can't you people do anything right?" Margaret knelt to gather the cups. "I apologize. The carpet edge caught my foot. I don't want excuses." Lisa's voice rose another notch. "I want competence. Maybe if you paid attention instead of daydreaming, this wouldn't happen." Dr. Foster's eyebrows lifted. James shifted uncomfortably, surprised by Lisa's vehemence over empty cups that had caused no real damage. "Lisa," James said quietly, moving toward her. "It's fine. Nothing broke." But Lisa was beyond reason, her perfectionism and stress combusting into public fury. Nothing broke this time. But what about next time? What if she'd been carrying hot coffee? What if it had spilled on a board member? She turned back to Margaret, who was now standing, cups gathered. "You're clearly not capable of handling this level of event. Stay in the back. Don't come out again unless specifically told to." Margaret met her eyes calmly. "As you wish, Doctor." Something in that steady gaze infuriated Lisa further. How dare this woman show no fear, no proper deference? "And wipe that expression off your face," Lisa added, her voice cold. "Your attitude is as problematic as your clumsiness." A board member nearby, Mrs. Eleanor Santos, frowned deeply. She'd been evaluating hospitals for 20 years and knew that how leaders treated subordinates revealed true character. This display troubled her greatly. James gently touched Lisa's elbow. "Darling, everyone's watching. Let's focus on the presentation." Lisa took a breath, remembered where she was, and forced a professional smile back into place. "You're right. I apologize for the disruption, everyone. Please, let's continue." But the damage was done. Mrs. Santos typed a note on her tablet. Chief of Surgery, concern regarding interpersonal conduct and staff treatment. In the back area, Margaret stood with the other catering workers. One of them, a young woman named Rosa, whispered, "That doctor is so mean. You okay?" "I'm fine," Margaret said. "But thank you for asking." Rosa shook her head. "She treats everyone like that. The nurses hate her. My cousin works here. She says Dr. Martinez makes people cry." Margaret filed this information away, another piece of evidence in the pattern she was documenting. The board review proceeded through the morning. Lisa delivered a polished presentation about surgical outcomes and departmental efficiency. She fielded questions smoothly, impressing most of the officials with her knowledge and confidence. But Mrs. Santos kept watching, noticing small things. How Lisa interrupted junior staff members who tried to contribute, how she took credit for team achievements without acknowledging others, how her smile never reached her eyes when talking to anyone she deemed unimportant. During the lunch break, James pulled Lisa aside. "You were brilliant up there. I'm so proud of you." Lisa beamed. "Thank you, darling. I think it went perfectly. Just, maybe ease up on the staff a bit." James added gently. That moment with the catering worker, it seemed harsh for such a small mistake. Lisa's smile tightened. "James, these events require precision. If I don't maintain standards, things fall apart. That's what leadership means." He nodded, wanting to believe her, choosing to believe her. "I know. You're right. Never mind. You know best." What James didn't see was his mother, watching from the service entrance, her heart breaking as she observed her son defending behavior that contradicted everything she'd taught him about treating people with dignity. The afternoon session was about to begin when the CEO made an unexpected announcement. "Before we continue, I'd like to recognize some of the people who make these events possible. Our catering team has worked tirelessly." He began calling names, thanking them individually. When he reached Margaret's name, listed on the temp agency roster, she stepped forward briefly. James glanced at the workers being recognized, his view partially blocked. He didn't see his mother standing there, didn't notice the woman in the catering uniform who looked so familiar. But Lisa saw her. Their eyes met across the room, and for just a second, Lisa felt that same inexplicable unease she'd experienced days ago in the lobby. There was something in this cleaner's eyes, some quality that didn't match her uniform. Then the moment passed, and Lisa dismissed the feeling. She had more important things to focus on than emotional service workers. The review ended successfully. Board members shook hands, made positive comments, and promised favorable reports. Lisa felt victorious. She didn't know that Mrs. Santos had requested a private follow-up meeting with Dr. Foster to discuss cultural concerns in the surgical department. She didn't know that 3 nurses had quietly submitted formal complaints about her behavior to HR that very morning. And she certainly didn't know that the clumsy catering worker she'd humiliated was taking detailed notes that would soon change everything. As Margaret removed her catering uniform that evening, she made her final journal entry about the day. Lisa performed brilliantly for superiors but showed contempt for those she sees as beneath her. James witnessed her cruelty but chose to rationalize it. The gap between who she pretends to be and who she is grows wider. My son deserves truth, even if it hurts. Tomorrow, everything would come into focus. Margaret had one more test planned, and this time, there would be no room for doubt. The morning of the hospital's annual gala arrived with perfect autumn weather. Melbourne's elite would gather to celebrate the hospital's achievements and raise funds for new equipment. For Lisa, it was another opportunity to network and impress. For Margaret, it was the final test. James had asked both women to arrive early to help with preparations. "I want my 2 favorite women working together," he'd said cheerfully, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Lisa arrived first, dressed in an elegant navy dress, her hair styled perfectly. She swept through the ballroom, directing decoration placement and sound system setup with her usual intensity. Margaret arrived 30 minutes later, wearing a simple but dignified grey dress, not designer, but neat and appropriate. She'd discarded the disguises. Today, she would appear as herself. Though James had mentioned to staff that his mother was helping with final preparations, few people had ever met her or knew what she looked like. When Margaret entered through the side door, carrying a box of donation brochures she'd offered to organize, Lisa spotted her immediately. "Excuse me," Lisa called out, her tone sharp. "The volunteer entrance is around back. This area is for official personnel only." Margaret set down the box calmly. "I'm here to help with the gala preparations. James invited me." Lisa's eyes narrowed. Something about this woman's voice, her bearing, tickled at the edges of recognition. "James invited you? In what capacity?" "I'm his mother." The words dropped like stones into still water. Lisa's expression cycled through disbelief, shock, and then horrified realization. The wet floor in the lobby. The coffee counter in the cafeteria. The clattered cups at the board review. That steady, knowing gaze. It had been the same woman every time. "Mrs. Chen," Lisa stammered, her face draining of color. I didn't realize. Why didn't you say something?" "Would it have mattered?" Margaret asked quietly. "Would you have treated me differently if I'd introduced myself while mopping floors? Or would you have simply hidden your true nature until I left?" Before Lisa could answer, James emerged from the kitchen area, his face brightening when he saw them together. "Mom." "Lisa. Perfect timing. I wanted you two to coordinate the welcome table setup." He was so genuinely happy, so innocent of the tension crackling between the two women, that Margaret's heart ached. "James," Margaret said gently, "we need to talk. The three of us." Something in her tone made him pause. "Is everything okay?" "No, darling. It's not." Lisa's mind raced, searching for strategies, angles, ways to control the narrative. "Mrs. Chin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, just us women, before involving James." "There's been no misunderstanding," Margaret replied. "Only truth that needs light." James looked between them, confusion deepening. "Someone please tell me what's happening." Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out her leather journal. She handed it to her son. "Read this. All of it. Then we'll talk." James took the journal hesitantly, flipping it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then widened. He turned more pages, reading faster. Lisa watched his face change, confusion shifting to disbelief, then to something that looked like pain. "Pushed me in hospital lobby. Called me people like you. No remorse. Soup burned my hand. She didn't apologize. Didn't ask if I was hurt. Humiliated me at board review in front of officials. Told me to stay in back. My son watched and defended her." "This can't be right," James whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. Pieces were clicking together in his mind. Lisa's comments about lazy staff, her impatience with nurses, the way she spoke to service workers. He'd always rationalized it as stress, as high standards, as the pressure of her position. Lisa moved closer, her voice urgent. "James, I didn't know it was your mother. If I'd known." "That's exactly the problem," Margaret interrupted, her calm breaking for the first time. "If you'd known. James, she didn't treat me badly because she didn't recognize me. She treated me badly because she didn't think I mattered." James looked up from the journal, his eyes meeting his mother's. "You disguised yourself? You tested her?" "I had to," Margaret said simply. "People told me things. Nurses called me, worried about the hospital's environment. I needed to see for myself who this woman really is when nobody important is watching." "This is manipulative," Lisa protested, finding her voice. "You deliberately deceived me, set traps, recorded everything like some kind of spy. How is that fair?" Margaret turned to face her fully. "I set no traps. I simply existed in your world as someone with no power, no connections, no ability to affect your career. And you chose to be cruel. Those were your choices, Lisa. Not mine. James sank into a nearby chair, still holding the journal. He thought about his childhood, his mother working multiple jobs, coming home exhausted but still helping with his homework, teaching him that every person deserved respect regardless of their occupation. He thought about her hands, rough from cleaning supplies and hard work, hands that had sacrificed so much for him. The lobby, he said suddenly, looking at Lisa. A few weeks ago, you told me some cleaner had been clumsy and you'd corrected them. You said she was unprofessional. Lisa's silence was answer enough. That was my mother. You pushed my mother. His voice was flat, processing reality in real time. I didn't know. Lisa cried, tears starting now. Real ones, born of panic. James, please, you have to understand. I was stressed, the investors were there, I was trying to maintain standards. Standards. Margaret's voice cut through. Is your standard to physically push people? To mock them? To burn your hand with soup and walk away without checking if I was hurt? James stood abruptly, moving to the window. He looked out at the city, his city, the one he'd climbed to the top of through his own hard work. But beneath that success was a foundation built by his mother's sacrifice, and he'd been about to marry someone who saw people like his mother as invisible. Lisa, he said without turning around, did you push her? In the lobby, did you physically push my mother? The silence stretched. Finally, barely audible. Yes. And the soup? Yes. The board review? James, it was just. Did you humiliate her in front of donors and officials? Yes, but. There is no but. James spun around, and both women flinched at the rawness in his voice. There is no but that makes any of this acceptable. My mother worked as a cleaner for years to put me through school. She knows exactly what it's like to be treated as invisible, as less than human. And you, his voice broke. You did that to her. You became the person she protected me from. Lisa stepped forward, desperation taking over. I can change. James, please, I was wrong, I see that now. I'll apologize to everyone. I'll take an anger management course. I'll do whatever it takes. Don't throw away our future over this. Over this. James repeated incredulously. Lisa, this isn't a mistake. This is who you are. My mother didn't catch you on one bad day. She documented a pattern. Multiple incidents, multiple disguises, always the same result. You're only sorry because you got caught. Margaret spoke then, her voice sad but firm. Lisa, I don't hate you. I truly don't. But I cannot stand by and watch my son build a life with someone whose values contradict everything I taught him. Love should elevate both people, not teach one to look down on others. Mrs. Chen, please, Lisa begged, turning to the older woman. I know I was horrible. I know I have so much to learn. But I love your son. Doesn't that count for something? Love without respect is hollow, Margaret replied. And you've shown repeatedly that you don't respect people you see as beneath you. What happens when James disappoints you? When he's vulnerable? Will you treat him with the same contempt you showed me? The question hung in the air, unanswered because Lisa had no good answer to give. James pulled the engagement ring box from his pocket. He'd been carrying it, planning to show it off at the gala that evening. He opened it, looking at the diamond that had cost him 3 months' salary. Then he closed it again and set it on the table between them. I can't do this, he said quietly. Lisa, I can't marry someone who would treat my mother, treat anyone, the way you did. The engagement is off. No. Lisa lunged forward, grabbing his arm. James, no, please don't do this. I'll change. I promise I'll change. Give me one more chance. He gently removed her hand. You've had chances. Multiple chances, actually. Every time you spoke to a nurse, a cleaner, a service worker. Every time you had the choice to be kind or cruel. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. The finality in his voice broke something in Lisa. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, ugly, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. For the first time in years, her perfect mask was completely shattered. Margaret watched with a mixture of sadness and relief. She took no joy in this moment, but she knew it was necessary. Her son deserved a partner who would honor the values she'd worked so hard to instill in him. James moved to his mother and embraced her. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." "You loved her," Margaret said simply. "Love makes us hopeful. But truth matters more." As they held each other, Lisa's sobs eventually quieted. She stood on shaking legs, mascara streaking her face, all elegance gone. She looked at James one last time, searching for any sign of wavering, but found only sad resolution. "I really did love you," she whispered. "I know," James replied. "But love isn't enough when respect is missing." Lisa walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind the ring, the future she'd planned, and the man she'd taken for granted. The click of her heels on marble, once so confident and commanding, now sounded hollow and lost. Margaret and James stood together in the empty ballroom, surrounded by decorations for a gala that would proceed without the happy couple at its center. The truth had finally emerged from beneath layers of pride and pretense, painful but necessary. 3 months after the broken engagement, Melbourne General Hospital felt different. The change was subtle but pervasive, like fresh air moving through rooms that had been closed too long. Dr. Lisa Martinez no longer worked there. She'd submitted her resignation the week after the gala, unable to face the whispers and knowing looks from staff who'd witnessed her downfall. Some said she'd moved to a private practice in another city. Others heard she'd taken a position at a research facility where she had minimal patient interaction. No one knew for certain, and most had stopped asking. What they did notice was the change in Dr. James Chen. The board chairman, once reserved and primarily focused on administrative duties, now spent more time on the hospital floors. He learned staff names, not just doctors, but nurses, technicians, custodians. He instituted an open-door policy and started monthly listening sessions where any employee could voice concerns directly to leadership. On a sunny Wednesday morning, James walked through the lobby with his mother. She was officially visiting this time, no disguise necessary, on her way to a volunteer coordination meeting. Margaret had taken a position helping to organize the hospital's community outreach programs. "Mrs. Chen," a young nurse named Rachel called out, waving. "Are we still on for the shelter meal prep this Saturday?" Margaret smiled. "Absolutely. I've got 3 more volunteers signed up too." James watched his mother interact with the staff, genuine warmth flowing both ways, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her test had been painful, but it had saved him from a marriage built on false foundations. In the cafeteria, they ran into Dr. Patricia Williams, who joined them for coffee. "The cultural assessment results came back," Patricia told James. "Morale is up 40% since spring. Staff retention is improving. People feel seen again." James nodded. "That's good to hear. We have a long way to go, but at least we're moving in the right direction." Patricia glanced at Margaret. "Your son has become one of the most respected leaders in this hospital system. I think he learned from the best." Margaret squeezed James's hand. "He was always good. He just needed a reminder of what matters most." Later that afternoon, James sat in his office reviewing applications for a new chief of surgery. The position had remained unfilled since Lisa's departure, and finding the right person was crucial. He wasn't just looking for surgical excellence anymore. He was looking for someone who understood that medicine was about serving people, all people, with equal dignity. His phone rang. It was Sophie Adams, Lisa's former friend. "Dr. Chen? I hope it's okay that I'm calling," Sophie said hesitantly. "I wanted to let you know. Lisa asked me to tell you something." James tensed slightly. "What is it?" "She's in therapy. Real therapy, working on understanding why she became who she became. She asked me to tell you she's not trying to win you back or make excuses." She just wanted you to know she's trying to change, for herself. James was quiet for a moment. Thank you for telling me, Sophie. I genuinely hope she finds what she needs. She also asked me to apologize to your mother on her behalf. She knows she doesn't deserve forgiveness, but she wanted it said anyway. After the call ended, James sat thinking about second chances and redemption. He didn't regret his decision. The Lisa he'd known hadn't been capable of the kind of partnership he needed. But he could hope that somewhere down the line, she might become a better version of herself. That evening, James visited his mother's house for dinner, a weekly tradition they'd maintained since he was in medical school. The small home was filled with the smell of her cooking and the warmth of unconditional love. "Mama," James said as they sat down to eat, "I never properly thanked you." "For what, my son?" "For loving me enough to tell me a hard truth. You could have stayed silent, let me make my own mistakes. But you risked our relationship to save me from a painful future." Margaret reached across the table and took his hand. "A mother's job is not to be popular. It's to protect her children, even from themselves sometimes. I would do it again, though I pray I never have to." They ate in comfortable silence for a while before James spoke again. "Do you think I'll find the right person someday? Someone who shares our values?" "I know you will," Margaret said with certainty. "But this time, you'll recognize her not by how she treats you when everything is perfect, but by how she treats strangers when she thinks no one important is watching." James smiled. "That's a good test." "It's the only test that matters," Margaret replied. Across the city, in a small apartment very different from her former luxury condo, Lisa sat in her therapist's office. The space was simple, unimpressive by her old standards, but she was learning that healing didn't happen in places designed to impress. "I kept thinking I had to be hard to survive," Lisa told Dr. Susan Moore, her therapist. "After Robert humiliated me, I convinced myself that showing kindness was weakness." "And now?" Dr. Moore asked gently. "Now I understand that what I called strength was actually fear. I was terrified of being vulnerable again, so I built walls made of cruelty and pride." Lisa's voice cracked. "And those walls cost me everything." "Recognizing that is the first step," Dr. Moore said. "The question is, what do you build now?" Lisa didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time in years, she was willing to sit with uncertainty rather than hide behind arrogance. She thought about Margaret Chen often, that calm dignity in the face of humiliation, the strength it took to endure Lisa's cruelty without crumbling. Lisa had thought Margaret's quietness was weakness, but she understood now it was the deepest kind of strength, the strength to remain kind when kindness wasn't returned. Lisa had started small in her own rebuilding. She volunteered at a community clinic, working alongside nurses and support staff, forcing herself to listen more than she spoke. She said, "Please," and "Thank you." She learned people's names. She asked questions about their lives and actually listened to the answers. It felt awkward at first, unnatural, like learning a language she'd once known but had forgotten. But slowly, something inside her began to shift. The armor she'd built started to crack, and underneath it, she found someone she barely recognized, a younger version of herself, before pride had poisoned everything. She would never have James back. She understood that and, in her healthier moments, accepted it. But maybe, someday, she could look at herself in the mirror without shame. That would be enough. Back at Melbourne General, the hospital's annual report was being finalized. The board noted record patient satisfaction scores, improved staff retention, and a waiting list of talented doctors wanting to join the team. The culture Margaret's test had exposed and James's leadership had reformed was becoming a model for other hospitals. Tori Bell. Mrs. Eleanor Santos, the board member who'd witnessed Lisa's behavior, called James personally to congratulate him. "You've created something special there, Dr. Chen. A place where excellence and compassion coexist. That's rare in modern medicine." "I had a good teacher," James replied, looking at his mother's photo on his desk. One Saturday morning, 6 months after the broken engagement, James volunteered at the community shelter meal service his mother coordinated. As he served food to people experiencing homelessness, he noticed a young doctor from a neighboring hospital also volunteering. Her name was Dr. Priya Sharma, and she worked in emergency medicine. She was efficient but gentle, remembering names, asking about people's children, treating each person with genuine interest. "You're Dr. Chen from Melbourne General," she said when they found themselves washing dishes side by side. "I've heard good things about the changes you've made there." "Just trying to get things right," James replied. They talked easily, and James found himself watching how she interacted with others. The homeless veteran who told the same story every week, the shelter coordinator struggling with a broken dishwasher, the teenage volunteer who dropped a tray of cups. In each interaction, Priya showed patience, respect, and kindness. Not because anyone was watching, but because that's who she was. When Margaret arrived to check on the meal service, James introduced them. He watched carefully as they talked, and he saw his mother's face light up with approval. Later, as they drove home, Margaret said quietly, "She's lovely." James smiled. "She is, isn't she? And more importantly, she sees people. Really sees them." "I noticed that too, Mama." Margaret patted his hand. "Good. You're learning." The story of Vanessa's, Lisa's, downfall became something of a legend at Melbourne General. New staff heard versions of it, some exaggerated, some understated, but all containing the same essential truth: that how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter reveals everything about your character. James kept his mother's journal in his desk drawer. Sometimes, when facing difficult leadership decisions, he would pull it out and read her words. They reminded him of what mattered, of the values that should guide not just his personal life but his professional one too. Pride in a marriage is like fire, it burns everything in its path. Love without respect is hollow. A proud woman does not only hurt her enemies, she hurts her husband too. These weren't just lessons about romantic relationships. They were principles for living, for leading, for being human in a world that often rewarded the opposite. As autumn turned to winter, James and Priya began spending more time together. Volunteer shifts that turned into coffee afterward, medical conferences where they sought each other out, quiet dinners where they talked about everything except medicine. Margaret watched her son fall in love again, this time with his eyes wide open. She saw how Priya treated restaurant servers, how she spoke to parking attendants, how she helped an elderly woman carry groceries without being asked. One evening, Priya came to Margaret's house for dinner. As they cooked together, Margaret found herself relaxed in a way she'd never been with Lisa. "Mrs. Chen," Priya said, chopping vegetables, "James told me about what happened with his ex-fiancé. About how you tested her." Margaret's hands stilled. "And what do you think about that?" Priya considered carefully. "I think you loved your son enough to risk him being angry with you. That takes courage. And I think you understood something important, that how we treat people when we have power over them shows who we really are." Margaret smiled. "You're a wise young woman." "My grandmother was a house cleaner," Priya said softly. "She raised me while my parents worked 2 jobs each. She taught me that every person deserves respect, regardless of their occupation or status. She said the measure of a person isn't how high they climb, but whether they remember to reach back and help others climb too." Margaret set down her knife and hugged Priya tightly. In that moment, she knew her son had finally found someone worthy of the love she'd taught him to give. A year after the broken engagement, James proposed to Priya at the community shelter where they'd first really talked. He did it while they were serving breakfast, in front of the people they'd come to know and care for. It wasn't glamorous or Instagram-worthy, but it was real, and it was them. At their small wedding 6 months later, Margaret gave a toast. "When James was young, I told him that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships, and the quality of your relationships is determined by how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them." She raised her glass. "Priya treats everyone with dignity, not because it benefits her, but because that's who she is. She didn't need to be tested because she lives the test every day. To my new daughter, welcome to our family." As for Lisa, she continued her journey of transformation. It was slow, painful work, confronting the insecurities and wounds that had twisted her into someone cruel. She would never be part of James's life again, and she accepted that loss as the consequence of her choices. But through therapy and genuine effort, she began rebuilding herself from the inside out. She started a blog about professional redemption, writing honestly about her failures and what she was learning. Some people mocked her, others found inspiration in her journey. 2 years after leaving Melbourne General, Lisa ran into Sophie at a medical conference. They had coffee, and Sophie barely recognized the woman sitting across from her, still professional and competent, but softer somehow, more present. "You seem different," Sophie observed. "I am different," Lisa replied simply. "I had to completely break down to rebuild into someone I could actually respect." "Do you ever regret what you lost?" "Every day," Lisa admitted. "But I regret who I was even more. James deserved better. His mother certainly deserved better. And honestly, I deserved better than the person I'd become." Sophie smiled. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you're doing takes real courage." As they parted ways, Lisa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope of getting back what she'd lost, but hope that she was becoming someone who deserved good things, someone who added value to the world rather than taking from it. Margaret Chen lived to see her grandchildren born, James and Priya's twins, a boy and a girl. She held them in her arms and whispered the same prayers over them that she'd whispered over James decades before. "May you always see the human in everyone. May you treat people with dignity. May you understand that we're all equal in the ways that truly matter." The leather journal she'd kept during those difficult weeks remained in James's possession. He planned to give it to his children someday, when they were old enough to understand its lessons. Because the story it told wasn't really about Lisa's downfall or Margaret's test. It was about something deeper. That character isn't what we claim to be, but what we reveal in moments when we think no one important is watching. It's about understanding that every person, from CEOs to custodians, deserves basic human respect. And most importantly, it was about the kind of love that's willing to tell hard truths, to risk temporary pain for lasting good, to test not out of cruelty but out of profound care for someone's future. Margaret had worn a cleaner's uniform and endured humiliation not for revenge, but for love. She'd documented cruelty not to destroy, but to reveal. She'd risked her relationship with her son to save him from a lifetime of unhappiness. That kind of love, fierce, protective, uncompromising in its standards, was the foundation upon which healthy lives were built. As the years passed, the story of Margaret's test became part of family lore, told and retold to younger generations. It reminded them that true character shows in small moments, that kindness costs nothing but reveals everything, and that the people we dismiss as unimportant are often the ones who see us most clearly. James often thought about those weeks when his mother had worn disguises, gathering evidence that would change his life. At first, he'd felt manipulated, tested in a way that seemed unfair. But as time passed and his happiness with Priya deepened, he understood the gift his mother had given him. She'd given him truth when illusion would have been easier. She'd given him pain that led to healing rather than comfort that led to destruction. She'd given him a chance to choose again, this time with his eyes open. And in doing so, she taught him the most important lesson of all. That love, real love, sometimes means being willing to be the bad guy in someone's story if it saves them from a worse ending. The test was over. The masks had fallen. And in their place stood truth, redemption, and the quiet dignity of people who understood that how we treat each other when it doesn't seem to matter is actually when it matters most. Glowing Star, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message. What did you learn from Margaret's courage? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Remember, character is revealed not in how we treat those who can help us, but in how we treat those who can't. Until next time, treat everyone with dignity, because you never know whose mother you might be talking to. Folded hands sparkles, hit that notification bell so you never miss our next